everyone, Midits here. I don't need to tell you what Pokemon is. You've probably been alive at some point during the last nearly 3 decades. Pokemon is basically impossible to avoid with how much media there is. From games to cards, merchandise, movies, and most importantly for this video, television. Speaking of TV, Ash Ketchum was the main protagonist of the Pokemon anime from 1997 to 2023 until very recently being replaced. In that period, he has traveled across 8 different Pokemon regions and gone through multiple Pokemon leagues and countless gym battles. But until the Alola League in Generation 7, Ash didn't win a single Pokemon League. Some of these were fair. Ash simply fought an opponent who was just as talented as he was. At other times though, we have some rather interesting losses. And that's exactly what we're going to be talking about in today's video. We're going to be looking at some of the most disappointing, embarrassing, and flat out anger-inducing losses that Ash has been through in his time in Pokemon leagues. We're going to be talking about 3 in this video, and we'll be going in the order in which they occurred. And I'll say this right off the bat, I will not be talking about the Kalos League. I love the XY series, and as much as I think that Ash winning that league would have been perfect, and I was super disappointed by the outcome, I don't think that fight can be compared to the others I'll be talking about. I think it's in the first camp I mentioned where there was no stupid thing that happened, and it's understandable how Ash could have lost that match. It's nowhere near as bad as what we're going to be going into. Kanto era Ash was a complete nincompoop. Despite being an alleged huge fan of Pokemon, he knew almost nothing about them. This is the part where you insert a joke about fans of literally any comic book character. Ash won most of his gym badges in means that weren't a fight. Instead, he was just given the badge for helping the gym leader or being a nice person or whatever. So in reality, it should be no surprise that Ash never stood a chance at the Indigo League Conference. But that doesn't do anything to help the fact that the way Ash lost is one of the stupidest things to happen in the history of the entire show. Now, the show has done some weird stuff before that contradicts the games. Sometimes it's misspoken dialogue.
Both of Ash's Pokemon are water types, and they're totally weak against fire type.
And other times it's some random mechanic that was created out of thin air. But what we're going to see here is another level. Ash by this point has made it to the top 16 trainers. Somehow, I don't really know. I guess most trainers in the Kanto region suck just as bad. Anyway, Ash is going up against this kid named Richie, who he recently became friends with. Before the match, Team Rocket has another scheme to capture Pikachu. Ash can easily stop them as usual, but this causes some of Ash's Pokemon to be a bit more tired as he has to rush to the match. It seems that Ash is about to be disqualified when he suddenly arrives via Team Rocket's balloon. Nobody cares enough to wonder why this kid showed up in the balloon of known criminals, and they just decide to continue the match as if this was a normal occurrence. Ash starts out by bringing out Squirtle against Richie's Butterfree, and Squirtle gets knocked out with... Wait, hold on, let me get my glasses. Let me look at this closely. Sleep Powder. Okay, I'm going to be completely honest. I was talking about this battle because of something that happens later on, but when revisiting these episodes, I completely forgot this was how Squirtle was knocked out. If you played Pokemon, I don't need to say why this makes no sense, but for the uninformed, Sleep Powder is a move that puts Pokemon to sleep and nothing else. Sleep Powder does not knock out Pokemon, and Pokemon that fall asleep are not unable to battle. So there is no reason the referee should have made that call. At this point, I'm starting to genuinely believe that nobody in the entire Kanto region understands how Pokemon battles work. No wonder Ash managed to make it this far. Anyway, Ash sends out Pikachu, who's still tired from the previous encounter with Team Rocket. Pikachu takes out Richie's Butterfree, and Richie then sends out his Charmander. Pikachu is so tired by this point that Charmander can take him out with ease. Ash then decides to bring out Charizard. If you haven't seen the show, you would know this is out of desperation, as Charizard has refused to listen to Ash since it evolved into Charmeleon, and anytime it's even decided to fight, it completely ignores Ash's instructions. But luckily for Ash, Charizard begins to fight. That is, until Richie sends out Pikachu, and Charizard promptly ignores it. And this is one of the worst moments of the whole show. Charizard lies on the battlefield, ignoring Richie's Pikachu, and the referee states that Richie wins because Charizard refuses to fight. As I said, there have been moments that game mechanics and moments in the show don't line up, but it's never happened as disastrously and in as important of a battle as this one. Now, I get the point they're trying to make here. You aren't going to win everything, and that's fine. Sometimes you'll go through a lot to accomplish something and still fail. That's a good message. But the problem is, most of what happened was the fault of outside forces. Team Rocket kidnapped Ash, making some of his team more tired. Squirtle should not have been taken out. If he fell asleep and then was attacked and knocked out, that would have been perfectly reasonable, but that just isn't the case. and Charizard not fighting and Ash immediately being disqualified is awful. The only thing I will say is Ash's fault is that he should have brought out another Pokemon besides Charizard. I think he might have had a better chance with Bulbasaur, even if there was a type disadvantage. And then of course, just for the final cherry on top of this dumpster fire of a Sunday, is that the crowd boos Ash when Charizard does nothing. This doesn't feel like Ash tried his best and still failed. It feels like the entire universe conspired together into screwing over this one kid. I don't know if this is the worst fight on this list, but it is most certainly a strong contender. Ash had pretty good and fair final fights during Johto and Hoenn, so I won't be going over them. Those were actual matches where Ash lost because his opponent was a bit better. But on the plus side, Ash had become a far more competent trainer since Indigo League. He's winning gym badges fair and square, he's capable of controlling all his Pokemon, and things are going great. Ash made his way from the top 8 to the top 4 of the Lily of the Valley Conference after an incredible match against his rival Paul that is easily the highlight of the Diamond and Pearl series. But throughout the league, we hear about this mysterious character who managed to get his 8 gym badges with ease and steamroll the other league competitors while using only one Pokemon. His name was Tobias. Now, Ash had to face him in the next round. While Ash purposely used his Sinnoh team against Paul, Ash was using a lot of older Pokemon during previous fights, which is part of what makes this conference so great. But what's not so great is the fight we're about to see. If you want an idea of how this fight is going to go, Ash vs Paul lasted 3 episodes, and this whole fight takes place across a span of 1. By this point, Ash knows what Pokemon he's going up against, and it's Darkrai, as in the mythical Pokemon, Darkrai. Do we ever learn how he has a Darkrai? Remember, the whole fight takes place across 1 episode. Ash brings out Heracross, and during the fight, it gets put to sleep. Luckily, Sinnoh isn't filled with a bunch of idiots, so Heracross is still able to battle. Not only that, but Ash taught it Sleep Talk just in case of a scenario like this. It doesn't matter in the end though, as Heracross is taken out. Ash sends out Torkoal, who doesn't stand a chance, and then sends out Gible, who stands even less of a chance. And then we get to what I do have to admit is the coolest part of this fight. Ash brings out his Hoenn ace, Sceptile, against Darkrai. It's an incredibly tough fight, and it seems that Sceptile is going out the same way everyone else did, but Sceptile pulls through and beats Darkrai. This is easily Sceptile's best moment from the entire series, and I find it very interesting that his most impressive feat comes after the series he originated in. Tobias beat everyone else in the tournament with Darkrai, so that has to be it, right? There's no way that there can be more powerful Pokemon at Tobias's disposal. Latios. Tobias pulls out a Latios. Sceptile is good, but not that good, and loses fast. Ash sends out Swellow, but it's completely hopeless at this point, and he also goes down. Lastly, Ash sends out Pikachu. Pikachu gives it its absolute all, with this being one of the toughest battles he's ever faced. In the end, it's a draw. Between Pikachu and Latios, not Ash and Tobias, Ash completely lost that. Pikachu and Latios both go down, with Ash having 0 Pokemon and Tobias still having 4 that we never even see. This is such a sour note to end such a great Pokemon League because Tobias legitimately appears out of nowhere. He's not interesting, he's not a character, he's just a plot device used to make sure Ash didn't win. Even if Ash brought out his best team possible at that time, I still highly doubt that he would even get to Tobias's final Pokemon. This doesn't feel like a fair fight in the slightest, it just feels like the writers needed to make sure Ash's journey continued, so they came up with the cheapest way out. If you were unhappy with how the Sinnoh League ended, you would be downright furious with the entirety of the next series that takes place in Unova. It seems that Black and White was supposed to be a complete reboot following an entirely different version of Ash Ketchum, who is just starting his journey. While this would make the Sinnoh League ending feel a bit more disappointing, and it would suck that we wouldn't get a proper send-off to the original version of Ash, somehow something worse ended up happening. Throughout the series, there are constant callbacks to the entirety of Ash's previous journeys, and by the end, it is completely impossible that this is a different version of the character. So, instead of this being a reboot with a new Ash starting from square one, Ash has just magically lost every single bit of knowledge he had back in Sinnoh, becoming even more incompetent than in Kanto. This is an issue that plagues the entire series, easily making Black and White the worst era for the Pokemon anime. These problems, of course, bleed into the Virtuous Conference, which kind of sucks in its entirety. Since Ash is going to battle this character, I should talk about Cameron. In the series where Ash once brought one Pokemon to a 3v3 battle, the writers managed to write a character dumber than Ash. He thought you only needed 7 badges to enter the Pokemon League, and that the Unova Pokemon League was going to be held in Johto. There's no way Ash could lose to this guy, right? Kanto Ash probably has a chance of winning this fight, and he barely even understood the concept of Pokemon. Anyway, let's check out the fight. Ash brings out Boldore, and Karen brings out a Hydreigon that he kept as a surprise. Ash starts off in a really rough spot, as both Boldore and Oshawott are taken out, but luckily, Pignite manages to defeat Hydreigon. Cameron then sends out Ferrothorn, and I know that the show could not care less about type advantages if it tried, but come on man, really? Ash of course makes an easy comeback, with Ferrothorn being knocked out. The victory is short-lived though, as Cameron sends out Samurott and makes quick work of Pignite. Ash decides to use Pikachu, Samurott is taken down, and Cameron decides to switch from a type disadvantage of a water type to an even bigger type disadvantage of a water flying type. To no one's surprise, Swanna is easily defeated, so Cameron's Riolu is up next. Ash decides to swap Pikachu for Unpheasant, but Riolu shockingly beats her very quickly. Ash sends out Snivy and is doing pretty good damage when suddenly Riolu evolves into Lucario. This is the type of stuff that would be considered advanced plot armor if it happened with Ash. Ash loses Snivy, and he's now back to Pikachu. It's a pretty tough match, especially since Pikachu is already tired, and he ends up losing to Lucario. Now, you can see this is a pretty dumb fight. I haven't given the nicest pictures of either Ash or Cameron, but I do need to come clean. I haven't talked directly about what makes this fight so awful. During the match, Ash uses Boldore, Oshawott, Pignite, Pikachu, Unpheasant, and Snivy. Cameron uses Hydreigon, Ferrothorn, Samurott, Swanna, and Lucario. Cameron doesn't have any other Pokemon in his disposal during the battle, and everyone realizes mid-match that Cameron only brought 5 Pokemon to a full 6v6 battle, and he still beat Ash's full team. A lot of dumb stuff happened when Ash fought Richie and Tobias, but in this case, Ash just lost because he outright sucked. This one is genuinely embarrassing. Pokemon's a bit of an odd show. It's part of such a huge franchise and has had many ups and downs, but I still love this show, even with dumb moments such as these. Not everything's perfect, and that's certainly the case here, but there's a special feeling with the show that you can't really get with the rest of the franchise. But while this show definitely holds a special place in my heart, I don't think I'm going to see myself revisiting Black and White anytime soon. Seriously, I am still in shock that Ash went to a full 3v3 gym battle and only brought Palpitoad. What were the writers thinking? I hope you all enjoyed today's video. If you did, check out some of my other content. If you really did, subscribe. If you're also a fan of Pokemon, comment down below which series of the anime was your favorite. That's gonna be it for now, and I'll see you all in the next one. Take care.